Hello everybody, and today we're taking a look at the Centurion Mk.10, and quite fittingly we're on the Sinai map. And this is quite fitting because an awful lot of combat happened during the Sinai Desert during the 1960s and the 70s. Not with the British using these though, but with the Israelis. The Israelis were given an awful lot of the Centurion Mk.10s as part of a deal for the British to figure out how well the vehicle worked in sandy and desert conditions, where it was really cold at night, really hot during the day, where there was a lot of sand to get sucked into the engine, just to see how reliable their Centurions would be. Now, this was in the 1960s and 70s when the British were in the process of beginning to want to develop a new tank. They had the Centurions and they had the Chieftains. The Centurions were pretty much being phased out at this point, but they wanted something newer and something more powerful than their long-loved Chieftains. The Israelis really did like the Centurions, which is good, because they got quite a lot of use out of them during the 1970s. Just to name a few, there was the Six-Day War in 1967, which was Israel versus Egypt, Syria, Jordan and Iraq. So that's Israel versus 4 other nations. The War of Attrition from 1967 till 1970, which was Israel versus Egypt, the Soviet Union, the PLO and Jordan, and the biggest of all of them, the Yom Kippur War, which was Israel versus, here we go, Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Algeria, Morocco, Saudi Arabia and Cuba. Yeah. Israel has always been sort of the... I have to try and do this and maintain as centrist as possible. The Israelis have always been seen as a Westerner's view into the Middle East. Most Western countries don't really support the Arab nations like Iraq, Jordan and Syria. Just look at our past history over there in the last 20 years or so. Yeah, so most countries supported Israel. Now, there were mostly occasions where their Arab neighbours were the ones who were aggressive towards the Israelis, although the reverse is also true in certain circumstances. Nevertheless, the Israelis loved their Centurions. They had both the 20-pounder version and the 105 version, with the Royal Ordnance L7A1 British Royal Ordnance 105mm main gun, which fired sabot and Hesh ammunition. And these tanks were more than capable of dealing with the T-54, T-55 and T-62s that they were fighting during the course of the 1960s and 70s. So how does the tank cope in War Thunder? When I unlocked this thing, I wasn't particularly fond of it, and I would hesitate to say that I love mine now. That was a bullshit shot, by the way. I'd hesitate to say that I love my Centurion now. I do like driving it occasionally. I'm trying to get the Vickers MBT at the moment, so I do like this tank. But you have to be very subjective about what you're getting when you unlock it. This tank has, for all intents and purposes at its battle rating, virtually no armour. And yes, that person in chat I think was talking to me. Just saying. I assume that was the RU251 driver. Anyway, moving on. This tank is... The gun is fantastic. Whether you have the 20-pounder or the 105, they're both brilliant at their own battle ratings. However, the armour does not improve from the Mark III, well, from the Mark 1 to the Mark III to the Mark 10. The armour does not improve, which means the Mark 1 is probably the best one of the lot, armour-wise, but the Mark 10 definitely has the best firepower. This is as to be expected. It is a 105mm gun after all, and it is at 7.0. Naturally, you're going to have to research this vehicle should you want to grind through the rest of the British tech tree. So this is more of a video of, do you want to continue driving your Centurion after you've unlocked it? I would recommend you do. It's a good way to learn the L7A1 gun, a gun that in War Thunder is featured in a lot of nations. The Germans use it with their Leopards, the British use it with their Centurions, and the Japanese use a version of it on their Type 74 as well. So it is a gun that you're going to be infinitely familiar with by the time you've finished grinding through the majority of the nations in the game. Personally, I think the 120mm gun on the Chieftain is better, but like the 120mm gun and on the Chieftains in general, the ammunition loadout that you get on the Centurion Mk.10 is the same. There is no unlockable shells for this tank. You get what you get straight off the bat. You get the Sabo and you get the Hesh. I used to just load this gun purely with Hesh. Now though, as you can tell, I tend to stick to Sabo. I load 35 Sabo, 8 rounds of Hesh. In the past dozen or so games I've played, I've yet to fire a single shell of Hesh at anything. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a shorter one today, I know, but I couldn't really get a lot of footage, so I'm afraid this was the best I could do. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like this footage, please like, share and subscribe for more. It really does help out the channel. A like or a dislike, either way works. You do you. And I will see you guys in the next War Thunder video. Cheers.